Hello, it's Rachel here again. I just want to make a very brief video about something that was brought to my attention fairly recently on Mike and Kim's channel, and they were talking about the city of Tyre and its destruction, and whether that prophecy was really fulfilled as stated in the book of Ezekiel. And so I got out this book. This book was the book that convinced me that the Bible is actually God's word. And the chapter that had the most impact on me was the chapter on prophecy. And I actually probably hadn't been a witness for long when we studied this, probably at the book study. And then I also went through it with a Bible student of mine. So the points got firmly established in my mind. And, it convinced me that without a doubt the Bible was true. However, this video that Mike and Kim made me think, I don't think the Watchtower writers were being that honest, really. So I turned to page 120 in here, and it talks about the fate of Tyre, and partially quotes what Ezekiel wrote. And I'll read what it's got here from Ezekiel chapter 26, verse 3, 4 and 12. This is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah has said. Here I am against you, O Tyre, and I will bring up against you many nations, just as the sea brings up its waves. And they will certainly bring the walls of Tyre to ruin and tear down her towers. And I will scrape her dust away from her and make her a shining bare surface of a crag. ... And your stones and your woodwork and your dust they will place in the very midst of the water. Okay, what it goes on to say in paragraph 10 is, well, did this really happen? A few years after Ezekiel uttered the prophecy, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, laid siege to Tyre. It was not, however, an easy siege. Tyre was partially situated on the mainland, but part of the city was on an island about half a mile offshore. Nebuchadnezzar besieged the island for 13 years before it finally submitted to him. It was, however, in 332 BCE, hundreds of years later, that Ezekiel's prophecy was finally fulfilled in all its details. At that time, Alexander the Great, the conqueror from Macedonia, was invading Asia. Tyre, secure on its island location, held out against him. Alexander did not want to leave a potential enemy at his rear, but he did not want to spend years in a siege of Tyre, as Nebuchadnezzar had done. How did he solve this military problem? He built a land bridge or mole across to the island so that his soldiers could march across and attack the island city. Notice, though, what he used to build the mole. The Encyclopedia Americana reports, with the debris of the mainland portion of the city, which he had demolished, he built a huge mole in 332 to join the island to the mainland. So, after a relatively short siege, the island was destroyed. Moreover, Ezekiel's prophecy was fulfilled in all its details. Even the stones and the woodwork and dust of old Tyre were placed in the very midst of the water. However, there's a bit of a problem with this, because when you go back to the book of Ezekiel and you look at chapter 26 and the ... portion of what was written in that book, it actually says a few, so that was verse, let's have a look, so 3, 4, so if we read verses 7, let's see what it says here about who would actually scrape Tyre off and deposit it into the midst of the sea. Verse 7, for this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah says. Here I am bringing King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon against Tyre from the north. He is a king of kings, with horses, with chariots, with cavalrymen, and an army of many soldiers. He will destroy your settlements in the countryside with the sword, and he will build up a siege wall and throw up a siege rampart against you and raise up a great shield against you. He will pound your walls with his battering ram, and with his axes he will pull down your towers. His horses will be so many that they will cover you with dust, and the sound of the cavalry, the wheels, and the chariots will cause your walls to shake when he enters your gates, like men storming a city with broken walls. The hooves of his horses will trample down all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your mighty pillars will crash to the ground. They will loot your resources, plunder your merchandise, tear down your walls, and pull down your fine houses. Then they will throw your stones and your woodwork and your soil into the water. So, who does it say that would throw your stones and your woodwork and your soil into the water? It very, very clearly states that it's King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon with his cavalry, his army of soldiers and horses. They would be the ones to do it. But did that actually get fulfilled? No, it didn't. That was not fulfilled. It was hundreds of years later when Alexander the Great, totally different nation altogether, he was the one that fulfilled that. Well, accomplished that. Who knows, maybe he got the idea from this. So, in my opinion, that's an epic fail of prophecy, an epic failure. And so it really pays to, when you see the ... dots, check them out, because there are many instances where Watchtower quotes things, putting dots in, and you find that what they are saying is actually very misleading. Something I found interesting too, because I've got a few more minutes, in Ezekiel, so I'll go back to chapter 26, and of course the following chapters, 27, 28, they tie very directly with what is stated in Revelation chapter 18 about Babylon the Great, and various other, as I was reading it, I was thinking about, who was it? Probably Paul, writing about the false religion in his day. Those sitting in the temple making out to be a god, and how these ones would be brought to ruin ultimately. And in Ezekiel chapter 27 and 28, it's talking about this. It says, the word of Jehovah came to me, Ezekiel, saying, as for you, son of man, sing a dirge over Tyre, and say to Tyre, and then it goes on to describe Tyre as being like a beautiful ship, really. Yeah, because it talks about her deck, her awning, her sail, her seams, her planks, and everything. So it's a beautiful ship, I guess, that thinks it's unsinkable. Guess what happened to it in the end? Down to the bottom of the ocean. It really, when you read it, it really connects to chapter 18 of Revelation, about the kings and the merchants and that, all looking at astonishment and sadness at the downfall of Babylon the Great. But yeah, it says in verse 27 of chapter 27, they will all sink in the heart of the open sea on the day of your downfall. So, yeah. Anyway, going on to chapter 28, I thought, gee, when you read this, you really think of jw.org, The witnesses have such pride in their city. And it starts out in verse 1 and 2. The word of Jehovah again came to me, saying, Son of man, tell the leader of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah says. Because your heart has become haughty, you keep saying, I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god in the heart of the sea. But you are only a man, not a god. though in your heart you feel that you are a god. And it goes on like that and talks about the downfall of that one. And isn't the governing body like that? You think of recent talks, you should fully trust Jehovah, Jesus, and the faithful slave. So trust the slave, which are men, just as you would trust God. So really, they are making themselves like God, and they are just men, and they are going to find out that the hard way, I hope. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Bye.